My name is Adam Cohn. I am a proud graduate of UVA School of Engineering, and these days I'm also extremely fortunate to serve as Chief Financial Officer for CNN Worldwide. Now, over the coming minutes, I want to tell you guys some of my stories, and I'll circle back to my day job and some of the fun that entails. But the first thing I want to do is actually tell you how I landed in this role, because in my mind, it's a good way to introduce and get into the theme and the topic that I've chosen to cover today. So let's begin there. Rewind the clock back. It is December of 2022, and I'm preparing for my interview for this role. And this is a true story, by the way. This is the first question that I received as part of this interview series. So I hop on Zoom. The guy shakes out my resume, and he looks up at me, and he says, "Okay, so let me get this straight. You are a mechanical engineer who currently works at an entertainment content and streaming company. You haven't been in the news business for over a decade at this stage, at least not directly. And remind yourself, a lot has happened in news over those last 10 years. And on top of that, you've never held this title at this level before. So please explain yourself. Why, against the backdrop of every other person in the world, are you the person to take this role at this time?" And that was it. And if I'm being honest, it's a very fair question, right? It's the kind of interview question that I assume every single person in here has received at some point or another as part of a process you've been in. Or if you're just getting into the interview circuit, you're gonna get this at some point. He was essentially saying, why you? And why you right now for this role? And I was meant to defend each of these points and explain why I should be in this role despite these things. Yet for me, the way I get into this is always to talk about my proactive pattern and how I've increasingly and intentionally stepped into this in a different way over time, and how every single thing up here represents a pattern where I've said yes. I say yes to things that I'm interested in. I say yes to things that keep me uncomfortable and a bit off balance on purpose from time to time, and generally I say yes to unique experiences. And that's the theme and the message that I want to deliver today. I want to encourage everyone here to do something unusual. Whether you're here as a student or a professor or a local member of the community, it doesn't matter. Whether you are entry level, just getting into your career, or a retiree, we've all grown up with these frames and these phrases and these sayings. Dare to be different, swim against the current, take the road less traveled. Once you get into your career path, you hear that your career is no longer a straight line to success, it's a squiggly path from point to point. And these things are accurate, and they're very easy to say and to accept and to hear. But how you go about this can be difficult. It can be scary and risky, and it can be a learned thing over time how you actually get into this. And for me, I feel like over the last couple of decades, I've had a lot of experiences, and I've gradually, intentionally built on this over time. So I'm challenging everyone in the audience here, but in particular the students. I want to challenge you to look at this and my experiences and my examples through your own lens or your own life experiences, and figure out where you either are saying yes to things that are unusual today or where you might be able to say yes to unusual things in a different way going forward. To that end, my examples are going to bridge from my time here at UVA to my professional experiences and even my personal life with my kids, but we'll start right here in UVA, put me back here in college. So this is my professional headshot. This is not me in college because I didn't want to start in this nice, elegant setting with me screaming on the hill at Scott Stadium or hanging out in the back of Coops, which used to be a little porch. You guys have it good with all that space these days. But I did run it through an AI filter to place me back in college. So at least, according to AI, this is me back in the early 2000s with spikier hair, a lot less gray, and apparently a gold chain. Doesn't matter. Those aren't the important details. What really matters here is that I am living in old dorms and I'm walking across the street every morning as I get into my major of mechanical engineering, which is something that I chose because I've always authentically been interested in unpacking and understanding how things work in the world. So that made sense to me. What I didn't realize when I got here is that we'd be one of the first classes, maybe the first class in the E-School, to be afforded the opportunity to graduate with a business minor. And I said yes to that. I didn't know where it was going to take me. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I was pairing these two unusual things together and exploring them. And what it led me down was a path where I had optionality when I got to apply for jobs and to explain my story. I applied for jobs in both of these areas, and it ultimately led me down a path in of media and business and strategy and the career that I've been enjoying today so far. And it's not just me, by the way. As I got prepped for today, I got to meet a lot of the amazing students who have put on this incredible event, And I started to notice this in some of them as well. And they introduced me to others and highlighted their friends and peers as well. And so I wanted to highlight some examples where I started to see this happening already. Like Ella, who went on her own journey to get into the architecture school and play a little catch-up and do media studies, but she's following her passion in interior design. Or Aaron, who's interested in airplanes and aeronautics and technology and can talk your ear off about it, but he's ultimately pursuing his passion in medicine and neuroscience. Or Arden, who introduced me and is in commerce and global studies, and we met a while back because we connected on LinkedIn through mutual friends, and she did an internship in journalism and media, and she's interested in that, and she's working in finance, and so we started to unpack and compare experiences and just talk through things. I love seeing this. I can promise all of you, I have no idea where this is going to lead you, but I think it's an important part of your story because I can tell that you're all authentically interested in these things, and I think that's what really matters. And so kudos to you all and keep this up. Now let's turn to some of my professional experiences. And I'll frame each of these against the backdrop of a challenge that one might face in the working world. So challenge number one, how do you contribute when you're amongst experts? And it doesn't matter, again, whether you are just starting off in your career or whether you are a seasoned executive, you're always going to be around people who either have more or sometimes different experiences. And so how do you address that? How do you become trusted or be a partner or an advisor for people? For me, at least, I've tried to say yes to immersing myself in experiences that are outside of my day job. When I first got working, I would ask to shadow somebody for a day, even if they were on a side of the business that had nothing to do with business and finance. These days, I get some other types of experiences, and so one way to illustrate that this that I wanted to show you guys is to show you a picture that I took. So this is me sitting in the back of CNN's Washington, D.C. control room, November 2024. This is election night. It's about 5:30 in the evening, and we were all there for another 10 or 12 hours. You can see 3 or 4 of our top executives in production and news who are at the front of the room. They emceed and kind of ran the entire evening. What you don't see here are the dozens and dozens of people who are in and out of that room and in the studios next door all throughout the night, or the hundreds of people that we have stationed all over the country who make the magic of this night come together. I got to witness this, and it's absolutely incredible. It's like art and science all coming together. The best way I describe this is it's like a symphony where you don't know what the next song or sometimes the next note is going to be, and they're playing off each other, and they're adjusting, and they're reacting, and they're fighting through issues and conflict, and it comes together in this way that is just incredible to witness. And believe it or not, they did not invite me as CFO to sit at the back of the room that night because they wanted my help. In fact, most of my job was actually to kind of sit as tightly as possible and stay out of everybody's way. But I said yes to this, both because it's a really cool experience and I'm very fortunate to be a part of it, but also because it's the kind of thing that makes me better at my job. I do have to make decisions about our spending around elections or enterprise reporting or original series. It makes me better at my job when I know what an executive producer does, or a technical director, or a graphics operator. I couldn't do their jobs, but it just makes me a little bit better. I join our editorial call most mornings at 9 a.m., not because I'm going to speak up, but because I like to know what's on tap for the day. Or if an editor asks me out for coffee to ask about the business, I'll say yes to that, because I want to answer their questions and I want to be there for them, but I also want to take the opportunity to ask them a little bit about their job and learn what they do. So saying yes to immersing myself in unusual circumstances, again, from early in my career to later, has been something that's been an asset for me, and I encourage everybody to do it. Let's switch gears, though, now. I will show you a different example. Switch gears from experiential to one's approach. And I'll give you another example of that and face a separate challenge here. So how do you influence? How do you kind of figure out ways to motivate or persuade or inspire people sometimes, often with difficult conversations in difficult situations? So one thing I've always done is take a unique approach, as you're seeing a little bit today, to how I present. I like to make things approachable and fun and different. So when I faced the challenge of talking to career, lifelong journalists about our need to transform and adjust our business model for the future, I spent the first 10 or 15 minutes of my time with our top 100 CNN executives talking about the music industry. Why music? Because it's different. It's a little bit disarming. They've heard plenty about cord cutting and misinformation. So I talked to them instead about Daniel Ek, the founder of Spotify, who set out to create something, in his own words, that was better than piracy, better than free. Then I showed them this graph from the turn of the century. Music industry revenue peaked, and the red bars represent physical sales, so CDs, vinyls, cassette tapes. And I showed them that for the next 15 years, music consumption and the way people paid for it fell. And that can be incredibly scary. And that happened because you had the introduction of piracy and the unbundling of albums into individual song purchases. Consumption, by the way, continued to grow throughout all this. Music was still music, but the business model and the way people were consuming and paying for music was changing a little bit under their eyes. And I said to everybody in the room, again, when you're watching this happen, it can be very scary and it can happen over a long period of time. Then I showed them that since then, with the introduction of streaming, the business has now grown and is bigger than ever. This is not, by the way, and I said this to everybody, a promise of what was to come in television, certainly, or journalism or video consumption. But my point to everybody in the room is that when you're following this downslide or these scary times, if you run your same playbook as a business over and over and over again, even if you're really, really good at that thing, if you're running your same playbook, you're going to be competing for a bigger piece of a much smaller pie, even if it stabilizes over time. Or you can mold and adapt and change with consumers, change with new generations, be there on new platforms. And keep in mind, remember, every step along this way, music remained music. We can all debate what good music is, but good music remained good music. And that underpinned the ups and the downs. So for us, journalism and trust and firsthand reporting is just as important as ever, sometimes more so important in a world of synthetic media and echo chambers and secondhand reporting and misinformation. So for us, this is the way I approached this and kind of started and sparked a conversation by just taking a slightly unusual approach and waking everybody up and getting them out of their chairs. And I could go on and on and on, by the way, with my work examples. When I was at HBO and HBO Max, I had the choice between the US business and the international business. So I chose international because I wanted to understand global perspective on media consumption. And I wanted to be a part of launching a business all around the world in different languages. When I had to roll out a mandatory compliance training, instead of sending a survey and some boring reading, I worked with Coy Wire and Isabel Rosales and Ryan Young and some of our correspondents and production teams to put together a fun kind of airplane safety video-esque training that we rolled out to get everybody laughing and talking in the halls and emailing. Did you see that compliance training? You should go take it. That is just something different in our approach, and it was fun. When I had to talk about our business plan for 2026 and what we had ahead of us in our global town hall a month or two ago, I started not with our financials, but with the Lunar New Year and the year of the fire horse and what that means. I put this visual on screen and everybody kind of was shaken. And I said, let's talk about freedom and movement and transformation. Then let's get into the numbers and the fun stuff that goes from there. And I could go on and on and on. And I'm showing you, I'll acknowledge, by the way, I'm showing you the fun, successful examples. What I'm not showing on here, but it's just equally as important, is that I've got dozens and dozens and dozens of different stumbles and adjustments and things that didn't work along the way. You don't get to these without going out and failing and trying unusual things. And so for me, this is the way I've always approached my work life, again, whether that's experiences or approaches. But let me turn our attention to the personal side of things, and maybe the most daunting challenge I faced yet. How do I convince or persuade my kids to do anything? These are 3 pictures, 2 from right here, or 2 from Georgia, 1 from right here in Virginia, of our kids who at a very young age are outdoor enthusiasts and little hiking adventurers. And they asked me for this, but it didn't start this way. Don't get me wrong, they still like their indoor time too, but they love getting out and about in the world. And it started with a friend who recommended, when our kids were really young, 2, 3, 4 years old, to start reframing the idea of hiking in a different way. So instead of going to them and saying, hey kids, let's go for a hike, which to them would eventually translate to, we're going to load you in the car, we're going to go for a boring drive, then we're going to go for a walk in the woods with nothing to do, and it's hot and your legs are going to be tired, maybe there's some bugs. Instead of talking about it as hiking, we would say, let's go for a scavenger hunt, and here are the 6 things that we're going to go find. Or you guys help us come up with the 6 things that we're going to find. Or we would say, we're going to go on a quest, a mission, and we're going to find the 3 coolest sticks on the entire mountain, and we're going to chuck them into a lake, and we're going to see if our dog Winnie cares enough about those sticks to go out and get them for us. It was just something that got their minds turning. Or we would say, let's tally and count every single animal we see today. Let's see if we can beat our previous record of 15 animals. And you guys are gonna have to keep repeating those animals because we gotta remember that list, and we'll go home and we'll draw pictures of them. The point is, for me, hiking is still disconnecting from devices and Slacks and emails and decisions and screens and analysis and everything in the real world. But for them, it's become something fun and imaginative and vibrant. And again, we get to share this together. Whether we're all experiencing it differently or not, it was just a reframing of the idea and getting into it in a different way that led us down this really fun path. I'll bring us once more back to these three icons. And if you're somebody who's hearing this and you're thinking about doing this going forward, I encourage you to practice it and dive into it with intention and just break from your routine. It doesn't matter what this looks like, big or small. It doesn't matter whether you start and stop. The idea is to get comfortable with being uncomfortable every once in a while. You could block time to meditate, go for a hike, go for a walk, go learn a new skill set, and then try to teach it to a friend to see if you've really learned it. Go join a class that's outside, or audit a class that's outside of your major. Join a new club. Talk to somebody at a UTS bus stop for 5 minutes. Just get used to talking to a stranger and getting into that uncomfortable position. Who cares if it's awkward? That's kind of the point. Take a different route to your class or to your school for 5 straight days and just see what else you see in the world. Try a new food. Try something you've previously failed at. Try a different presentation style and see if it works for you. Join or volunteer with a new club with some friends. Go out and wake up for the next 30 days for 30 minutes earlier than you have to, just to see what you do with that extra time. Prepare your friends and loved ones so they don't worry about you, but disconnect from your device for a couple of hours, or even a couple of days if you can do it. But take an entire day or a weekend just to get yourself out of that comfort zone of having that in your pocket and thinking about what you can look up at any time. Whatever it is that you do, I'm just encouraging everyone here, and in particular the students, break from your routine, say yes to things that are interesting and authentic to you, and don't be afraid to do something unusual. Thank you again for your time, and thank you for having me here today.